Day one of Chicago Bears training camp was supposed to be a triumph, a celebratory ribbon cutting on a brand new era. Summer sun baking the turf at Halas Hall, thousands of fans flooding the bleachers in fresh jerseys, and a palpable, white-hot energy surging through Lake Forest. After a grueling off-season of overhaul, installation, and hype, this was the moment the blueprint was supposed to come to life. The roster looked primed, the installation was set, and the defense was poised to hit the ground running with aggressive, fast-paced intensity. Fans showed up expecting smooth sailing, crisp 11-on-11 reps, and the reassuring hum of a fully healthy football team taking its first steps toward NFC North dominance. Instead, before the first helmet was even strapped on, the sky fell. The entire mood inside the building evaporated in an instant when the official transaction wire dropped its daily update like a live grenade onto the desk of every reporter in the press box. No forewarning, no subtle hints during initial press conferences, just cold, unforgiving administrative ink confirming a nightmare scenario for Chicago's newly appointed defensive caller. Starting nickel cornerback Kyler Gordon was officially placed on the physically unable to perform list. Minutes later, the second blow landed with sickening precision. Veteran linebacker and defensive signal caller T.J. Edwards was sidelined on the non-football injury list. Just like that, the core of the defense was erased before practice even began. The immediate atmosphere shifted from summer festival to high-alert emergency ward. To the average fan, July roster designations sound like minor clerical paperwork, cautious maintenance moves designed to save key veterans for September. But inside an NFL coaching room, the PUP and NFI lists on day one of camp represent an absolute catastrophe. Football is a game of brutal arithmetic and terrifying rhythm. Every single missed rep in late July compounds exponentially by early August. When you lose two foundational starters on day one, you don't just lose their physical talent. You tear the beating heart right out of your defensive installation. The timing could not possibly be worse for Chicago's defense. The entire architecture of this defense relies heavily on instant communication, disciplined pre-snap adjustments, and absolute trust in the middle of the field. Installing a scheme isn't about drawing lines on a whiteboard. It's about building muscle memory at full game speed. It requires a slot defender who can trigger on a dime to kill a perimeter screen, and a middle linebacker who can read an offensive guard's first step and immediately check the rest of the front into the correct gap assignment. That kind of synchronized perfection takes hundreds, if not thousands, of high-speed reps to execute seamlessly. Now, those reps belong to ghost assignments and scrambled depth charts. Instead of building chemistry, the coaching staff was forced to enter triage mode before the very first horn sounded. The immediate fallout created an eerie, tense environment on the practice fields, where there should have been the voice of T.J. Edwards echoing across the front seven, barking out pre-snap checks, setting the line, and ensuring everyone was aligned before the motion started. There was only uncomfortable hesitation. Where there should have been Kyler Gordon aggressively locking down the slot, firing off the edge on nickel blitzes, and setting the physical tone for the entire secondary, there was a glaring, gaping hole in the middle of the field. The alarm bells inside Halas Hall weren't just ringing, they were blaring at maximum volume. Chicago's vision of a dominant, fast-starting defense was instantly thrown into jeopardy. In modern professional football, an elite defense cannot afford to spend August trying to figure out who is supposed to be calling the plays, nor can it afford to leave the most vulnerable area of the field wide open to exploitation. The entire timeline for this defense was instantly knocked off its axis, transforming what should have been a routine opening practice into a high-stakes, race-against-the-clock crisis. The foundation was cracking on day one, and the domino effect was only just beginning to fall. Act 2. The Kyler Gordon slot vulnerability. To understand why Kyler Gordon's sudden absence on the PUP list feels like a catastrophic structural failure, you have to dissect the brutal, unforgiving mechanics of Dennis Allen's modern NFL defense. In the popular narrative of football, casual fans obsess over star perimeter cornerbacks who shadow primary receivers down the boundary, or explosive pass rushers who rack up double-digit sacks off the edge. But inside Allen's high-pressure schematic blueprint, the ultimate chess piece doesn't align on the outside edge. He lines up in the slot. The nickel cornerback position is no longer a luxury depth option. It is the functional engine of modern defense. Modern offensive coordinators build their passing schemes to exploit the middle short zone, flooding the slot with lightning-quick route runners, athletic move tight ends, and motion-heavy pre-snap alignments designed to pull defense secondary units apart. To neutralize that constant threat, a coordinator requires a rare hybrid athlete. You need a defender fast enough to stay hip-to-hip with explosive receivers on vertical slot fades, physical enough to spill oncoming lead blockers in the run game, and hyper-instinctive enough to time blitzes through tiny pre-snap gaps. Kyler Gordon is that rare, multi-dimensional weapon. He isn't merely playing nickel corner for Chicago, he is the operational duct tape holding the entire secondary together. Gordon's unique physical profile allows Allen to stay in light nickel personnel even when opposing offenses bring heavy personnel into the huddle. When opponents run outer zone sweeps, Gordon plays like an extra linebacker, fighting off perimeter blocks and setting a hard edge. When opposing offenses dial up third and long drop-back passes, Gordon transitions seamlessly into a lockdown coverage defender or a game-changing slot blitzer who flusters quarterbacks before they can hit their second progression. Without Kyler Gordon on the field, the entire system fractures from the inside out. Roll the tape on what happens to this secondary when Gordon isn't occupying that crucial slot alignment, and the visual evidence is harrowing. When a backup or non-specialist steps into the nickel position, the ripple effect forces Allen to play with tied hands. Opposing quarterbacks immediately key in on the nickel, back and pre-snap reads. Without Gordon's elite closing speed and instincts, the quick game passing attack becomes an unstoppable cheat code. Wide receivers feast on quick slants, bubble screens, and option routes right through the belly of the defense, picking up chunk yards without resistance. Even worse is the devastating impact on Chicago's run defense and pressure packages. When a secondary lacks a physical slot corner who can crash the B-gap and execute run fits, opposing offensive coordinators simply run the ball directly at the nickel alignment. The defense becomes soft down the middle, forcing safety help to drop down into the box prematurely. The moment safety help drops down to assist against the run, the top comes off the defense, exposing the boundary cornerbacks to single coverage isolation on deep post routes and double moves. This isn't just about losing a talented individual athlete. It's about the collapse of defensive elasticity. In Dennis Allen's scheme, the nickel corner enables every single pressure, look, and disguise. If Gordon isn't on the field to threaten the blitz or disguise coverage down low, the front seven becomes predictable. Opposing offensive lines can slide their protections with absolute confidence, neutralizing the pass rush before the ball is even snapped. The tape doesn't lie. When Kyler Gordon is absent, the middle of the field transforms from a dangerous no-fly zone into a massive, inviting freeway for opposing play callers. Every route, every check down, and every motion is designed to drag Chicago's backup nickel into deep water. As camp practices wear on, every single snap without Gordon exposes a defense fighting a losing battle against time and structural geometry, leaving a wide open target on the chest of the Bears' secondary. If the void in the secondary creates a structural crisis, the sudden silence at middle linebacker threatens complete operational failure. Football defenses are complex, moving organisms that require a central nervous system to function under fire. In modern football, that central nervous system is the helmet with the green dot, the direct radio link to the defensive coordinator worn by the primary signal caller. With TJ Edwards sidelined on the non-football injury list, Chicago didn't just lose its leading tackler and most reliable run stopper, they lost the loud, commanding voice that ensures 11 furious players execute a single unified call before the play clock hits 0. Edwards was the ultimate steadying force in the middle of the field. He possessed the rare pre-snap vision required to diagnose offensive formations in a fraction of a second, shifting line defensive tackles, adjusting coverage checks, and screaming out tendencies before the center even touched the football. When you remove a communicator of that caliber, the immediate result isn't just missed tackles, it is pure, unadulterated chaos across all three levels of the defense. Enter Devin Bush. Signed in the offseason as a high upside depth acquisition, Bush was brought to Chicago to revive a career that once carried the pristine pedigree of a first-round draft pick. Blessed with explosive sideline-to-sideline speed and violent hitting ability, Bush's talent has never been in question. But his career path has been defined by inconsistent processing, injury setbacks, and the heavy weight of unmet expectations. Now, due to Edwards' injury, Bush isn't being eased into the system as a sub-package rotational piece. He is thrust directly into the fire, handed the green dot helmet, and expected to command the entire defensive apparatus alongside Jack Sanborn and DeMarco Jackson. The pressure on Devin Bush is absolute and suffocating. This was supposed to be his fresh start, a clean slate under a coaching staff renowned for resurrecting linebackers. Instead, he finds himself standing in the epicenter of an early camp emergency. Managing your own assignment in a new system is hard enough. Being responsible for making sure 10 other teammates are lined up correctly while an opposing offense shifts and uses pre-snap motion at hyperspeed is an entirely different mental burden. In early practice reps, the friction of this sudden transition is instantly visible. When a defense swaps its primary caller, the subtle timing that makes a defense play fast disappears. The linebackers hesitate for a split second before triggering downhill into their run gaps. Communication, passes along the front seven become rushed, frantic hand signals rather than seamless, confident checks. A missed alignment between Bush and Sanborn leaves a tight end wide open on a seam route. A late call from the middle of the field forces a defensive end to rush off the ball a beat too late, ceding the edge to an outside stretch run. For Bush, every snap in practice carries terrifyingly high stakes. If he stumbles over the communication checks or hesitates during pre-snap reads, the entire linebacker room fractures with him. Jack Sanborn, a physical, instinctual plugger who thrives when playing next to an elite communicator, is forced to overcompensate, taking his eyes off his own keys to ensure calls are getting echoed properly. DeMarco Jackson, fighting for meaningful snaps in the rotation, finds himself scrambling to adjust to late alignment changes. The chain reaction ripples outward, linebackers crash into the wrong gaps, safeties are forced to come downhill out of position to make emergency tackles, and simple running plays turn into explosive 50-yard gashes. This is the ultimate crucible for Devin Bush's career revival. The margin for error in an NFL camp is razor thin, and the clock is ticking relentlessly toward September. If Bush can master the playbook under extreme tension and command the defense with authority, he transforms from a reclamation project into an indispensable pillar of the roster. But if early communication missteps lead to blown assignments and fractured confidence, the narrative around his career will darken once again, leaving Chicago's front seven utterly defenseless against the ruthless offensive play callers waiting just over the horizon. Act 4. The emergency backups stepping up. When crisis strikes the top of an NFL depth chart, the ambient noise of training camp undergoes a sudden, violent transformation. The cozy, low-stakes environment designed for developmental project players vanishes into thin air. There is no longer room for slow learning curves, tentative footwork, or gentle teaching moments on the sidelines. The harsh, blinding light of the emergency spotlight swings away from the proven stars and lands square on the shoulders of the men who were supposed to spend August standing quietly on the fringe of the practice field, holding clipboards and waiting for second-half preseason snaps. Suddenly, those forgotten depth players are thrown directly into the fire with the first-team unit, tasked with maintaining an elite standard they were never expected to shoulder so soon. In the secondary, all eyes lock immediately onto Josh Blackwell. Thrust out of his comfortable, specialized niche as a special teams gunner and forced directly into the nickel slot, Blackwell finds himself occupying the most hostile patch of turf on the practice field. The transition is ruthless. Playing special teams requires straight-line speed, raw aggression, and uninhibited physicality. Playing slot receiver coverage in Dennis Allen's defense requires subtle hips, lightning-fast mental processing, and the ability to diagnose complex route combinations in a microsecond. Every single rep Blackwell takes in practice is now an agonizing high-wire act. On one play, he is asked to jam a lightning-quick slot receiver off the line of scrimmage while keeping an eye on the quarterback's drop. On the next, he has to trigger downhill into the A-gap on a blitz, avoiding a 300-pound guard trying to pancake him into the grass. When Blackwell executes a flawless break on the ball and knocks down a pass, the sideline erupts in tentative relief, but when he hesitates for a fraction of a second on a play-action freeze, the primary receiver glides past his outside shoulder for an effortless walk-in touchdown. There are no intermediate grades in this trial by fire, only survival or exposure. Meanwhile, the tremor in the front seven shifts immense pressure onto second-year linebacker Ruben Hyppolite II. Standing on the razor's edge of the roster bubble, Hyppolite came into this training camp fighting simply for a spot on the bottom of the 53-man squad. Now, with TJ Edwards sidelined and the entire linebacker rotation reshuffled, Hyppolite's snaps are no longer developmental fluff. They are life-or-death evaluations. For a young linebacker fighting for his professional life, taking first-team reps alongside veterans is both a golden opportunity and a terrifying trap. The speed of the game at the starter level is blinding. Guards pull with terrifying velocity, running backs hit gaps before the play even appears to develop, and pre-snap cadences are designed specifically to trick young linebackers into taking a false step. Every time Hyppolite misreads a guard's light key or fails to fill the correct B gap on a goal line stand, the coaching staff's red pens leave brutal marks on the film review. He isn't just playing to execute a scheme. He is playing to prove that his dream of a long-term NFL career shouldn't end on the late August cut list. This is the hidden, brutal reality of modern NFL training camps that casual observers rarely see. For the multi-million-dollar starters, an early August practice is a warm-up exercise, a chance to knock off the rust and sharpen their tools. But for emergency backups like Blackwell and Hyppolite, these sudden first-team reps carry the apocalyptic weight of an entire career hanging in the balance. One missed tackle on a third down period doesn't just mean a bad day at the office, it means losing the trust of the defensive coordinator. One blown coverage communication doesn't just result in a practice touchdown, it signals to the front office that they need to start scouring the waiver wire for external replacements. As the hot sun bakes down on Halas Hall, the atmosphere among the depth players becomes thick with tension. The casual camaraderie of the locker room gives way to an intense, quiet urgency. Every single repetition is treated like a game-winning drive in November. Blackwell grips his gloves a little tighter as he lines up over the slot. Hyppolite stares down the offensive line with desperate focus, knowing that his future in the league is being decided right here, right now, on every single snap. They were supposed to be riding the bench, but the emergency bell has rung and there is nowhere left to hide. As the high-velocity chaos of July turns into the unforgiving heat of early August, the Chicago Bears find themselves standing at a critical fork in the road. What began as a routine opening week of training camp has rapidly metastasized into a full-scale operational health crisis. In the high-stakes, hyper-optimized landscape of the modern NFL, defensive chemistry cannot be manufactured overnight. You cannot simply plug a player into a spreadsheet, cross your fingers, and expect a complex, multi-layered defensive system to function seamlessly when its two most vital operational brains are sitting in baseball caps on the training room sideline. Losing your primary defensive communicator and your starter in the nickel slot at the very beginning of installation doesn't just cost you a few days of practice, it sets the entire defensive timeline back by weeks. Football at the highest level is fundamentally a game of fractions of a second and instinctual, unspoken trust. When TJ Edwards is on the field, the pre-snap calls ripple across the defensive front with effortless, quiet precision. When Kyler Gordon is in the slot, the secondary operates with a fearless, elastic flexibility that allows Dennis Allen to bring exotic blitzes from every imaginable angle. Take those two pillars away during the most critical teaching window of the entire calendar year, and the rest of the unit is left trying to build a high-speed engine out of missing, mismatched parts. The domino effect of this health crisis extends far beyond the boundaries of Halas Hall. Around the league, rival offensive coordinators aren't watching Chicago's early practice film with sympathy. They are watching with cold, predatory delight. In today's analytical NFL, coaching staffs spend their summers building ruthless target matrices. They look for structural weak points, communication bottlenecks, and inexperienced backup defenders who can be manipulated with pre-snap motion and fast-tempo cadences. If Chicago is forced to limp out of August without Gordon and Edwards fully healthy and integrated back into the starting lineup, the warning sign on this defense will be blindingly bright. Opposing play callers won't hesitate for a single play. The moment week one kicks off, they will line up their premier playmakers directly in the slot, drag tight ends across the middle to test backup green dot linebackers in coverage, and attack the seam routes until the replacement unit proves it can stop the bleeding. They will turn every single drive into a relentless stress-testing audit of Chicago's depth. The clock ticking down toward the regular season is completely indifferent to Chicago's bad luck. August offers no soft landings and no forgiveness for incomplete installation. The young depth players currently stepping into the void are fighting valiantly with everything they have. But trial-by-fire experience in a summer practice can only stretch so far when real game planning enters the equation. Every practice snap that goes by without the primary starters on the field narrows the margin for error to a microscopic hair's breadth. This is the ultimate test of Chicago's resilience, coaching adaptability, and roster construction. Can the backups elevate their game fast enough to hold the fort, or will the weight of these early setbacks drag the entire defense under? Can the medical staff perform a quiet miracle on Lake Forest and get their stars cleared before the real bullets start flying in September? The answers to those questions will dictate everything that follows. If Chicago can weather this early August storm, survive the mounting pressure, and get their defensive anchors back on the field in time, they can still salvage their explosive potential and establish themselves as a force to be reckoned with. But if these injuries linger and the communication tears remain unpatched, the collapse won't wait for autumn. It will arrive with brutal, ruthless speed the second the lights turn on for week one.